What's up, everybody? My name is Joe Brownie, and this is Heresy Financial. On Wednesday, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, warned Congress yet again that time is running out and Congress must find a solution for the debt ceiling issue. And if they do not, in Janet Yellen's words, it could cause irreparable damage to the US economy. And in this video, we're going to talk about why. Ready? Let's dive in. The exact date in which the United States will completely run out of money will be somewhere in between the next 1 to 2 months, and Janet Yellen said it will happen sometime in October. Now, for a government that can print its own money, how could something like this possibly happen? Well, it comes down to the way the law works. Back in the beginning of our country, if the United States wanted to spend money, they could only spend money that came in through various types of taxes. Remember, federal income taxes were not legal, and so they didn't make any money from federal income taxes. They made most of their revenue from tariffs. And if they wanted to spend any money in addition to that, they had to take on debt in order to do so. And by law, every single time Congress wanted to take out debt, Congress had to authorize every single bond issue by the United States Treasury by passing a legislative act that approved the issue and the amount. This means that every time they wanted to take on any new debt whatsoever, there had to be, big legal loopholes that they had to jump over to get through to that. Well, in 1917, they came up with the debt ceiling, which meant, hey, we don't have to vote on each individual bond. We can issue debt however much we want and for whatever purpose we want, as long as we don't run up against or exceed that debt ceiling. And then we all know what happened after that. Every single time they did hit the ceiling, they just voted to raise it. Now, another thing that happened right around the same time as the debt ceiling was created was the creation of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the money printer. And in order to stop the Federal Reserve from ever becoming a source of unlimited funding for anything the government wanted to spend money on, a law was put in place saying that the Federal Reserve could not just print money and give it to the government for spending. They also don't have the ability to lend directly to the United States government. They can only buy US government bonds off the market. And so theoretically, this puts a limitation on government debt because they can't just get it from an unlimited printer. They have to go to the economy first, borrow it out of the economy, and then that debt might find its way someday over to the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Now, it's more of a picket fence that's jumped over all the time these days, with banks just operating as the middleman between the federal government and the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve buying up a ton of US government debt from the market to allow the market to go and lend more money to the government to sustain or fulfill any funding needs that the federal government needs. But you obviously run into a problem when you hit that debt ceiling once again, especially in times of political polarization. Now, we ran up into this debt ceiling 2 years ago in July of 2019, and instead of the Congress deciding on raising the debt ceiling, they just decided they were going to suspend it for 2 years and figure it out later. Well, that 2 years came in July of 2021, and Congress still hasn't figured out a resolution for this. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the Treasury cannot issue any more debt in order to pay for anything. So it has to draw on emergency funds, and one of those is the Treasury General Account. This is like the checking or the savings account for the government, and you can see it's been dropping very quickly, and we're probably about a month, maybe 2 months away from this account hitting zero. The Treasury can also rely on some other emergency funding methods like investments in federal pension programs, but those will not last forever. And like Yellen said to Congress again today, October is likely when all of that will run out. So what happens exactly when all that runs out and they do not have the ability, they don't have any more dollars that they can spend on the areas that they have to spend? Well, all those places that routinely get cash from the government stop receiving payments. One of those is Social Security. Another one is Medicare. Another one is the military. And the biggest one that will have the ramifications of not only potentially destroying the United States economy, but sending shockwaves and taking down, causing massive instability all across the world, is a default on interest payments on US Treasury debt. Because at this point, you have to remember, we still have $28 trillion worth of debt, and that is not interest free. So just because we're not taking out new debt doesn't mean we don't have to keep on paying interest on all that existing debt. Now, the United States defaulting on its debt payments, even if it's just a temporary default, even if they miss, a couple interest payments on their debt, that is a catastrophic issue because treasuries are the foundation of the global financial system. It would almost certainly result result in a collapse of the dollar because everybody everywhere would start to dump treasuries. And the Federal Reserve would have no choice but to buy them all up to keep the price of treasuries elevated to stop those interest rates from spiking. And because those prices then would be held artificially high by an entity that can print money out of thin air to buy them, it would give the incentive to the rest of the world, hey, we don't even have to take a loss on these treasuries. We can sell every single one of them because we've got a buyer with unlimited infinite pockets. And you might think, well, why would the Federal Reserve do that and give the incentive to the rest of the world to keep selling them? Because the ramifications of them not doing that would plunge the global financial system into catastrophe with those rates spiking so high. So in their mind, they would be choosing the lesser of two evils. Now, I have to say, I've said it before many times, I don't think this will happen. This is what's considered a black swan event, because a black swan event is not something that nobody could predict. A black swan event is something that is technically predictable and people can conceive of something like that happening, but it's considered so unlikely that it's virtually impossible that it would ever happen. And the fact of the matter is, Democrats do not want to take the fall of raising the debt ceiling all on their own. They want Republicans to participate simply because doing this so close to elections is something that's considered politically unpopular. So they don't want to have to shoulder all of that as they're coming up for re-election. But Republicans are looking at this and saying, hey, we don't want to shoulder any of this burden because, quite frankly, we don't have to, and so we want to be able to point at you and say you did it all on your own. But either way, the pain of collapsing the global financial system is a lot worse politically than the pain of deciding to raise the debt ceiling all on your own as Democrats. And so likely, right before doomsday date arrives, they will vote on raising the debt ceiling. And at that point, the United States Treasury will start to issue a lot of new debt again. We'll start to have an influx of collateral into the US banking system. You'll see the reverse repo facility at the Fed collapse because banks won't have to go to the reverse repo facility to get their hands on collateral. They'll be able to get it from the market like they used to be able to. And you'll start to see that pendulum swing back the other way where entities start using the regular repo facility and start accessing the Fed for cash needs instead of collateral needs. So in summary, what is going on right now is likely just political posturing with both parties trying to coerce the other party into helping out bear the burden of making an unpopular political choice. But when it comes down to it, nobody wants to risk crushing the entire global financial system, which is almost certainly what would happen if they just decided to quibble over it and not resolve it before they ran out of money. On the other hand, it might be worth just a little bit to place a small bet on the incompetence of politicians. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day.